So thank you for waiting, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here today. The goal of today's webinar and this new series that we're doing is basically meant off of sort of education. So getting people more familiar with the system, being able to introduce new features that we've came out with. And so I thought that this first example was going to be a really good webinar that we could do. And that is being able to sync up Microsoft and Google documents with Wallboard. So that could be anything from a PowerPoint file, a Word doc, Google Sheets, maybe Google Slides, Google Docs, etc. So we sync those all through OneDrive and Google Drive. So I'll be showing that off, talking about it today. But this was something that we had gotten requested a lot by partners. I'll talk more about why I think that is, but this is definitely something that I heard a lot in demos and just talking with end users. All right, let's go to the next slide here. All right, that is not me, but this is another gentleman. But this is, again, what we'll be covering today. So basically, the reason why I think a lot of people ask for this feature is because most people are familiar with Microsoft products, Google products, so whether you're editing in a PowerPoint document or maybe a Google Sheet or Google Slides, a lot of people are already familiar with those platforms. So if they've already been maybe making their signage, maybe in the past that's just been making a PowerPoint file and sticking it up on the display, it's really easy to get them into the system using Wallboard. And then again, they can still use their PowerPoint documents if they want. I think a lot of people see our content editor and think that that's all we offer is a content creation tool. But I think it's very important to keep in mind the pieces of dynamic information that we can bring into the system, because if we can automate a lot of that, we can keep the content fresh and people can edit in tools that they feel more comfortable in. So we definitely don't want to restrict anyone down to just using our editor. So really quick, just a little bit behind the technology of how this works. So whenever we're bringing in like a doc, a sheet, or a PowerPoint, or what have you, it's actually rendering that into a PDF. So if you're thinking of like, oh, in PowerPoint files, can I bring in videos and things like that? It is just taking a snapshot of it. So when we look in our file manager, it actually brings them in as PDFs, but we do support these document types, and I'll show you how. Last but not least, the minimum server version requirement. So this is for all of our partners. If you're on our multi-tenanted US server or European servers, don't worry about this. You already have this update. But if you don't have this version in your content editor, you can see it up at the tab whenever you're in the content editor online. You'll see it at the top. If you don't have this version or if you're below it, let us know and we can work towards upgrading your server so you can take advantage of these features. Last but not least, these changes do take 30 to 60 seconds. So whenever a change is made, it takes Wallboard about 60 seconds to bring in that new screenshot, let's say. So if you notice me making changes and I have to wait for a second or maybe tell a not so funny joke, bear with me because again, that sync time is around 30 to 60 seconds. And there we are. So now it's demo time. We've got Bill here to get us going. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get into it. As Christine said in the chat, we will have a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, just please let us know. All right, here. Let me just open up one of my hundreds of windows here. Okay, perfect. So we should see everything. All right, so before I get started, I do want to explain a couple of the steps that we're going to have to do before we can see this integration. So for all of those that you have used this system, you know that we can use shared folders. A shared folder, and I'll go ahead and go into our file manager. A shared folder looks something like this. So when I click into it, right, it has a OneDrive symbol in this case. And if I click into it, it has a PDF. It's actually a PowerPoint file, but that's in here. And so anytime that we've wanted to create a connection with, let's say, Google Drive or OneDrive and bring files in automatically and have them sync up automatically, like whenever there's a change, we've always done this through these platforms. And we use what we call our shared folders. So I'll show you how to add one of these later. But I just come up here, click on that plus icon, I click connect to shared folder, and these are the folders that we're syncing all of our documents into. But before we can do that, one of the things that it's going to ask us for is going to be our Microsoft or our Google credential. If we go to settings and then we come down here, and if this bar is popped up, you can just press that here and you'll go to cloud integration. This is where you actually authenticate Wallboard with Google or Microsoft. So before you can access any of that information, you basically have to log in with those platforms. So like if you've ever logged in with, let's say, like Google or Microsoft on a website, It's kind of the same thing, except we're going to ask you to authorize a couple things. Now, as you can see, I already have plenty of accounts on here. I've already done my personal one for this demo. So just keep in mind that when I add this for the first time here, you will be missing a couple steps. I'm going to click here on Microsoft credentials. Let's pretend that I want to add a OneDrive folder. I'll click Add New. And I'm going to say that this is John's new drive. I'm going to say the scope is a drive. And there's a couple options you can press here, but I'm going to go with personal. This is usually the best option in most cases. And I'm going to click Authenticate. Now, this is what may be a little different. You'll notice it will just say Authentication Successful. At this point, if it's your first time doing it, this is where it would ask you to allow Wallboard to be able to access your OneDrive, etc., just giving us permission. I'll show you the same thing with Google. It's no different. Okay. And we'll just add Drive here and then sign in with Google. And so, yeah, it looks something like this here. And then I'll just click Continue. There we go. So that gives you an idea what it looks like, at least in Google. Very similar for Microsoft. All right, so the boring portion's over with. Let's get to the more exciting portion. So let's actually go into a content that I made to show this off. So I'm going to go into this one here. And right off the bat, we're actually going to see this slide will start loading some of the presentation files. So as you can see, this is a PowerPoint in this example, and I'll show you how we can customize some things in the properties panel to make this display a certain way. But if I wanted to change this up or add something new, I would simply click on my widget here. And in this case, I'm actually using a gallery widget. So if it's your first time using Wallboard or you're new, just drag this gallery widget here. And what I like to say is what you see is what you get. So our blank canvas, you can kind of drag anything anywhere. So if this is your first time using the gallery widget, there you go. And I'll click Use Folder here, and I'm going to click on this folder path. Now, what it's doing is it's telling me to select a folder. Now, I could technically click on that PowerPoint folder like we had earlier and click Choose Selected. And if I just wait a couple seconds here until it goes over to the next placeholder, you'll see that it brings in our first slide. Now, I want to show you how to add the folder. So let's say I didn't want to bring in this PowerPoint folder here. Well, that's where I could come here and click on this plus icon. I could connect a shared folder. Let's say I want to do OneDrive in this example. There's John's new drive. Now, this is the new thing that we added. So under here, under select types, so previously you probably were bringing in like images or videos with these OneDrive or Google Drive folders. However, if I click this here and I select some of these additional options, you'll even see PDF here. Yes, you also can bring in PDFs because again, all of these are converted into PDFs in one way or another when they're brought into Wallboard. And then once I've allowed those, I now need to come down to sync mode. Replace file on change. What this means is that anytime I make an edit in my presentation, the edit will appear in Wallboard and on your signage. That change, again, takes about 30 to 60 seconds. Once I've done that, I'm going to scroll down here. And this is where I can click on Wallboard files. Now, this is my OneDrive file structure. And so just to show you kind of like an apples to apples here, I'm actually going to pull up my OneDrive so that you can see exactly what I'm seeing here. Let me actually move this here. Perfect. All right. So you should see, right? I mean, this is the same exact folder structure that I have in my OneDrive. And if I click on Wallboard files here, and I'll even do so here. If I go into PowerPoint files, you'll see I just have one PowerPoint file inside of here. It's actually this one here I'll bring up in a moment. So once I've done that, I'll select PowerPoint files and I'll click Connect. Now, it's going to say that I have two folders that are the same. That's because I've already added this folder. So in this case, I'll just add one for Excel. So you can see that I now have an Excel folder just because I didn't have a folder there previously. I'll show you the same thing again for Google Drive. It's a very similar concept. So Google Drive, again, you select your credential. There's that new one I added. You'll click on this dropdown. Again, the names are a little different. So Sheets, Slides, and Google Docs. And we'll replace that file on change. And so you can see here, I've just separated all of my files here, or all of my files into folders. So of course, if I click into, like, let's say Sheets, I just have one file in there. And so if I go in here, and select that and click connect. It will then bring that file in. So now that we've done that, I do quickly want to show off how we do the auto sync changes. So we'll use this PowerPoint example since that's the first folder we tried to bring in. So we can see that that file has been brought in here. And if I hover over it, it's called PowerPoint webinar file. I'm going to go ahead and select that here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is now that I have that set up, and I'm just going to go ahead and click save, I'm going to go into my PowerPoint document. So let me go back here. And here is my PowerPoint file. So this is the same one that I had brought in from my OneDrive folder. And you can see that, of course, I have various slides here. This is just a PowerPoint template that they provide by default. But again, a lot of people feel a little bit more comfortable maybe editing in PowerPoint as opposed to Wallboard. So again, this is where we say, don't be restricted to our editor. Use this, and maybe this is a way that you want to automatically put changes onto your screen. So if I say, welcome to Wallboard, and let me actually delete this part here, and I'll write my name. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and press save. Now, I don't have any funny jokes, so I usually would be saying something at this point, but really I'm just trying to stall because it takes about 30 to 60 seconds for those changes to come through. Now, you may notice when I come here, you won't see them in the editor immediately. So I will come here to preview. We probably won't see them yet because I'm not very patient for those of you who know me. So let's maybe wait a couple more seconds here and we'll see those changes come through. Hey, there we go. I'm so glad I didn't forget to press the setting there and that actually worked. So, okay, awesome. So I didn't forget anything. I did it right the first time. Yes, thumbs up in the chat. Thank you so much. Let's talk about how we customize it now. So of course we know that if I make a change in a Microsoft document or a Google document, it will feed into Wallboard. Well, let's see the same thing, or let's see how I change that. So like you may have slide timers in your PowerPoint file or in your Google slide file. However, we set that here in the properties panel. So again, if you're new to Wallboard, anytime we want to edit something, it's all done from the properties panel. So there's no scripting required or anything like that. It's all done through drag and drop, sliding properties. So if I come down here, I could randomize it if I wanted to. I don't really want that. Probably the most important one that you'll use is going to be the delay feature. This is very simply just how long I'm waiting to go from one slide to the next. So you'll see here in a moment, it's going to show this for 10 seconds and then move on to the next. I can even say, okay, do I want to skip the first slide? So if I wanted to skip the first slide, I could just select 2 here, and this is technically the second slide, so it's staying here. I could even go to PDF options, and if I untoggle this, this basically lets me set how many pages I want to show. Maybe I don't want to show all of the slides, for example. So these are just some additional settings here. From that, you're pretty much just able to customize it any way you see fit. So, whether you want to maybe drag it into sort of a center canvas here or something like this, you certainly can. I'm not a graphic designer, but I will show you something really quick if I get out of this presentation. Again, one of the things that I mentioned is I don't think Wallboard needs to be the creative tool necessarily for everything. We can be a tool though for routing information into. So whether, again, it's these, dynamic documents or things like that, we can bring that in. So this is a layout that was created by Wallboard. So if you could imagine, let's say that you gave someone access to one of those OneDrive folders that has a PowerPoint file in it. Well, I can drag this gallery widget here. And just like before, I'm just going to select use folder, and I'm going to select my PowerPoint, or my folder with my PowerPoint file in it. And I'm going to click choose selected folder, right? We give it a couple seconds, and now that feeds into the center there. So if I go ahead and preview this, I'd like to show this because, again, I think it just shows a good example. But one of the things I want to mention here is that, again, you don't have to design everything in Wallboard. Someone that has access to this zone or this presentation here, maybe this is all they have access to. Maybe someone in design is designing this layout here, or maybe this is something they did in their first Wallboard training. But here in the center, someone can just edit a file, and that's all they know Wallboard for, right? We're just being used at this point to route information into a zone where someone can edit it. So I just wanted to point that out. This is a workflow that I see some customers using where maybe they don't want to train someone up on the Wallboard system, or they just know that they're not going to feel comfortable in anything else other than PowerPoint, but we want to have nice signage. This is a really nice happy medium. So let me get out of this. There were a couple more document types I wanted to show you. Of course, we said that we support docs, sheets, etc. I will show you a doc version here. So I'm just going into another content. This one is portrait. So give it a second here. So this is an example of, again, I'm just pointing to a folder that has Word files in it. Now, if you didn't want it to kind of resize like this, you could turn on keep ratio here. So that way it won't sort of resize your documents like crazy. At that point, again, too, you can resize it. And there we go. You can see that it's now kept its ratio and it's not resizing. There we go as well. So now you could design things up top, down low. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Just make sure that if you are trying to bring in like a Word document or something like that, right? Most of those are in portrait. So if you're trying to put that on a landscape display, you might have to tweak your design a little bit to account for that. All right. So let me go ahead and close out of this here. I'll just show one more thing here. So let's go into this content one more time. All right. So the last one I want to show you, of course, I showed you Microsoft. It's no different for Google Slides, as I'm sure you can imagine. These are my Google Slides. And so if I click into this Google slide here, or this presentation, you can see multiple slides, as you can see here. So you can see it's scrolling through them. And again, when I go to the folder path here, and I click on slides, you can see that it's now in here. So really, there's no different between OneDrive and slides. It's the same. So is the refresh time. So if I were to come in here and I were to just say, how is this demo so far? Hopefully good. But yeah, so this edit will come through just like anything else. I'm sure if we waited here long enough, and I'm not sure exactly how many slides there are, but those changes, whoops, let me just go ahead and make sure those save, will come through. I just wanted to bring this new change that we added to the system to you all. Again, give it 30 to 60 seconds and that change will come through. But this was something that we added, and I think a lot of people will start using as they start adding more and more shared folders and know that this is available. So maybe I'm not having success on this last one, or maybe Google's just being a little difficult with me because we put Bill Gates on that last slide there. I'm thinking so. So not sure what's going on there. Robert's typing in the chat, so he's probably explaining what's going on. We do have a question. So I guess this is where I will transition it into Q&A. It says, do the changes sync in both directions? If changed in Wallboard, does it change in PowerPoint in the shared folder? Okay, so that's what Robert was answering. You can't edit the source file in Wallboard. The files are only changed in their respective platforms. So let me get out of here. And at this point, we'll leave it to Q&A. So are there any questions or anything that you were hoping to see that maybe I didn't cover? One of the things I would like to mention is that these also can be interactive. So if you do have sort of like an interactive kiosk and you had a PDF, or you had I think like in like municipalities or cities, sometimes they have to show certain documents and things like that that are available to the public. So you could actually scroll through that like a normal document. We do have a PDF widget for that. Rod said in the chat, can you also use Excel files to build dashboards and dynamic charts based on this feature? Yeah, that is correct. So let me actually go back here. One of the things that I did want to mention, and let me just open up any Excel document here. So we have a Power BI integration, and that license can be a little bit more expensive depending on what someone's trying to do with that particular license. However, if you can get your information, or if you're already housing a lot of your data into Excel, an easier way for you to bring that into Wallboard may just be Excel and not Power BI. So you can kind of, in a sense, use this as a way to build dashboards if you have, let's say, this data in an Excel file being populated from another database. This is just something that is possible because, again, it's taking a screenshot. So if they can't necessarily use Power BI, this could be another option. All right, a lot of questions. So that's a good thing. So Robert said, what is the PDF widget for? Why did you use only the gallery widget? I swear Robert's not a plant, everyone. I didn't ask him to ask these questions, but this is a very good question. So the PDF widget, as you can see here, so Robert brought up the PDF widget. I know we were only talking about Microsoft and Google in this case, but this can be used with those documents as well. However, what this gives you the ability to do, and let me just kind of delete this one in the background that's distracting here. So if I click on, let's say this like PowerPoint file, for example, so if you give it time, I can actually scroll through this and navigate through it. So previously in our software, we haven't really had a scroll functionality. So if anyone's ever tried to build something in an interactive kiosk, they may have found it a bit limiting that we could only use like arrow button presses, right? Like when I press this button, it goes to the next page. Well, now I can stay on that same page and I can actually scroll through media. So in this case, it is a PowerPoint file, but it could be a PDF. You know, it could be something you designed in Photoshop and then exported to a PDF. So there's a bunch of different ways that we could now use this PDF tool and customize for like interactive presentations and things like that. I'll say one more thing here. We did see something in the chat that said, Judah said, thank you for adding this feature. Our clients were always asking about it. That's great. So I'm glad to hear it. Last but not least, too, I think there's Shlomi. Shlomi said, if we got $1 for every time a client asked me if we could upload a PowerPoint presentation or a Word doc to the editor, I'd be a millionaire today. Finally, there's a solution. Unfortunately, we didn't become millionaires before then, Shlomi, but yes, we are here. So with that being said, thank you so much, everyone. If you have any more questions, we'll leave you to it. But again, thank you for your time.
Yeah, and thank you so much, John. That was fantastic. And we're so glad that so many of you were able to join us. Just a couple things. We will share the recording link with you afterwards. So we will check your inboxes in the next few days. Also, if there's any topics you'd like us to cover, absolutely just fire it into the chat right now, or you can send us an email. Most of you have John's email, my email. We'd love that. And expect another webinar in the coming weeks. We're probably going to host them at the same time, same day. So in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have another one coming out. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. And thank you so much for joining us again.